I am Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, born on February 12, 1809, in a humble log cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky. My life is often told in grand terms, but my beginnings were far from grand. I grew up poor, and the lessons I learned in those early years about hard work, perseverance, and equality shaped me into the man who would one day lead the nation through its greatest crisis, the Civil War. My family wasn't wealthy or well-educated. My father, Thomas Lincoln, was a farmer and carpenter, and my mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, passed away when I was just 9 years old. Her death left a deep scar on my heart, and my early years were marked by toil and grief. My father remarried, and my stepmother, Sarah Bush Johnston, helped fill the void, providing me with love and encouragement. She was instrumental in my education, though formal schooling was scarce. In total, I had less than a year of formal education, but I had a deep hunger for knowledge. Books were rare in the frontier, but I devoured any I could find, especially the Bible, Aesop's fables, and works by Shakespeare. My father often needed my help on the farm, and as I grew older, I worked as a rail splitter, a job that built my physical strength and earned me the nickname Honest Abe. Despite the demands of daily labor, I used every spare moment to teach myself law, history, and rhetoric. I learned by candlelight, often reading late into the night after long days of hard work. At the age of 22, I left home, seeking to make something of myself. I moved to New Salem, Illinois, where I worked various jobs: store clerk, surveyor, and postmaster. These jobs put me in contact with a wide range of people, and I gained a reputation for honesty and fairness. But I yearned for more. I studied law, eventually passing the bar in 1836 and beginning my legal career in Springfield, Illinois. My time as a lawyer introduced me to the complexities of the human condition as I represented clients from all walks of life. It was during these years that I became increasingly involved in politics. In 1834, I was elected to the Illinois General Assembly as a member of the Whig Party, and it was there that I began to sharpen my ideas about governance and equality. I believed in the importance of infrastructure development and commerce, but more importantly, I believed in the promise of the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal. These ideas would guide me throughout my political career. In 1846, I was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, where I served a single term. During that time, I spoke out against the Mexican-American War, a position that was unpopular in my district, but one that I believed was morally right. After my term, I returned to Illinois to focus on my law practice, but I couldn't stay away from politics for long. The issue of slavery was tearing the nation apart, and I could not sit idly by while the country I loved was pulled in opposite directions. The expansion of slavery into new territories and states became the central issue of American politics in the 1850s. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed new territories to decide for themselves whether they would permit slavery, outraged me. It went against everything I believed in. I re-entered politics with renewed vigor, speaking out against the spread of slavery and emphasizing that a house divided against itself cannot stand. I believed that the nation could not endure permanently half slave and half free. My stance put me at odds with many, but I knew that it was the right path. In 1858, I ran for the U.S. Senate against Stephen A. Douglas. We engaged in a series of debates, known as the Lincoln-Douglas debates, that focused primarily on the issue of slavery. Though I lost the election, these debates brought me national attention. I made it clear that while I did not seek the immediate abolition of slavery in states where it already existed, I was firmly opposed to its expansion. I believed that slavery was a moral evil, one that was fundamentally incompatible with the principles of liberty and justice. By 1860, the country was deeply divided. The Democratic Party had split into northern and southern factions, and I emerged as the Republican candidate for president. My platform was simple: prevent the spread of slavery, uphold the Union, and promote economic growth through infrastructure and commerce. The election was contentious, and when I won, I knew the country was on the brink of collapse. Southern states, fearing that I would abolish slavery entirely, began to secede from the Union even before I took office. On March 4, 1861, I was sworn in as president. In my inaugural address, I appealed to the Southern states to remain in the Union, promising that I had no intention of interfering with slavery where it already existed. But my words fell on deaf ears. By April, the Confederacy had been formed, and the Civil War began with the attack on Fort Sumter. The Civil War was the darkest chapter in American history, and it tested me in ways I could never have imagined. Leading a nation at war with itself is a burden that no man should have to bear, but I knew that preserving the Union was essential. If we allowed the Southern states to secede, it would set a dangerous precedent, one that could ultimately destroy the United States. The war was not just about slavery. It was about the survival of democracy itself. The war dragged on for 4 long years, and the toll it took on the country was immense. Hundreds of thousands of men died, families were torn apart, and the very fabric of the nation seemed to be unraveling. But even in the darkest moments, I held fast to my belief that the Union must be preserved. I appointed Ulysses S. Grant as the commanding general of the Union Army in 1864, and his leadership helped turn the tide of the war in our favor. While the war raged, I knew that the issue of slavery had to be addressed. In 1863, I issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that all slaves in the Confederate States were free. Though it did not immediately free all slaves, it was a crucial step toward ending the institution of slavery. It also shifted the focus of the war, making it not just about preserving the Union, but about fighting for human freedom. One of the most difficult moments of the war was the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. It was one of the bloodiest battles in American history, with over 50,000 casualties. In the aftermath, I was asked to deliver a speech at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery. My address, though brief, sought to remind the nation of the larger purpose of the war. I spoke of a new birth of freedom and of ensuring that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. The Gettysburg Address has since become one of the most famous speeches in American history, a reminder of the principles upon which our nation was founded. In 1864, I was re-elected as president. The war was nearing its end, but the country was still deeply divided. In my second inaugural address, delivered in March 1865, I spoke of the need for healing and reconciliation. I called on the nation to bind up its wounds, with malice toward none, with charity for all, and to strive for a just and lasting peace. The Civil War finally came to an end in April 1865, when General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. The Union had been preserved, and slavery was abolished with the passage of the 13th Amendment. The long national nightmare was over, but the wounds of war would take years to heal. Just days after the war ended, on April 14, 1865, I was shot by John Wilkes Booth while attending a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. I died the next morning, never seeing the full fruits of the peace I had fought so hard to achieve. My life was one of struggle and sacrifice, but it was also one of great purpose. I led the nation through its most difficult period, and in doing so, I helped to ensure that the ideals of liberty and equality would endure. My greatest achievement was the preservation of the Union and the abolition of slavery, but I am also proud of the economic and social reforms that laid the foundation for a stronger, more just America. I often spoke of the importance of democracy, and I believe that the United States represented the last, best hope for human freedom. Though I did not live to see the full realization of that vision, I know that the principles I fought for, liberty, equality, and justice, continue to inspire people around the world. I am Abraham Lincoln, and my life was dedicated to the cause of freedom.